Two Fresh princes, now became old dirty bastards. Spent half their life off their nut getting plastered. 2 decades later, after they first met, now chatting shit on your TV set. It's Scotty Money, Scotty Money, Scotty Money, Scotty Money, Scotty Money.
The one with the lens on.
Right, keep this in, keep this in. We're all laughing because Jay's been sober for 10 years and he's not dabbing there, he's crying into his arm because I couldn't work out which camera I'm supposed to be looking at. And if I'm not, I'm looking at the right one now because that's the one with the smiley faces. We've got that down. It's a very special Scotty and Motti today, so thank you for watching. This year has been a great success. Not only Manchester United won the FA Cup final, but also my good brother from another mother has made it to 10 years, a decade of being sober, and that's quite an amazing feat, and I'm proud of you.
Thank you, brother. You always say this, and we've done this a couple of times, haven't we, on this journey since me and you started doing Scotty and Motti. I think we did it the first year we did Scotty and Motti, which would have been 4 years ago, so that would have been my 6 years, 7 years.
4 years.
It was lockdown, wasn't it? Do you remember?
I can't keep track of time.
I know, man, and you know, it's never a dull moment. So yeah, we had a little chat then about how many years I've got in, and I've done a few podcasts where I've spoke to a few people. I did like an event as well, talking about sobriety. We get a lot of messages. I know you reply to a lot of messages in the chats that we get. I get a lot of messages on Instagram asking about it. So I thought we'd just have a chat about my journey. And I do want to emphasise the point of my journey because I don't want to sit here and go, this is what you should do. Because I've got mates who have got, you know, a lot of clean time, have got further down the road than I have, who do things differently to me. I've done things differently in the past where I've had clean time in the past, or I've had, you know, a few years or whatever, or a couple of years, and hasn't, for one reason or another, I haven't stuck with it or it hasn't worked out or whatever. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about what I have done over the last 10 years and why it's sort of stuck. Because you're someone who, you know, me and you were chatting off camera, who there's times when you want to quit and you will. Like me and you've gone through stages where you've been like, you know, 6 months, whatever. Yep. And you've gone like, right, I'm not gonna have a breather. Whereas for me, I can't do that where I can just have a few months or a year or whatever, go back to drinking and then have another break. It doesn't work for me like that. It never has done, which is why when I made a sort of conscious decision to stop, I know it is a day at a time, but I didn't want to stop for good. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? That was the plan, is just to stop drinking and stop using drugs.
I was with you when you had your last drink in Atlanta.
Oh yeah.
But what was the? Did you set out parameters? Like, because you didn't mention anything at the time. Because I didn't know at the time. You didn't know at the time. No. I'd have got you home a lot more drunk. If that
didn't even get drunk, did we? We just had a couple of pints or something. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. That turned out to be our last, my last drink. Sorry. Yeah, in Atlanta, 2014, obviously. No, I didn't. I had a conversation with Mrs. and she'd had enough of my drinking and taking drugs and disappearing for days on end. We were trying to expand our family. We'd had a bit of bad news on that front, and it was a case of, if we are going to try for another baby, are you going to be around, or are you going to be disappearing for days on end? Are you going to be spending all the money on drugs? And if you want to do that, fair enough, you go and do it. Yeah. And if you don't, then let's try and do something differently. And I just felt as well, I wanted to be present. We already had a daughter, and I wanted to be present in her life. I wanted to be present in my missus' life, and I wanted to start or expand the family and be, you know, be a good dad or whatever, and try and move forward in my life, because I didn't really getting anywhere. Do you know what I mean? It was just like, me and you sort of, our career paths have gone very similarly, but it took me 10 years to get to uni, or a bit longer. No, about 10 years, wasn't it? Because I tried college, just smoking weed all the time, dropped out, went back to college, did the same thing. And then the only time I actually went to uni and it stopped was when I'd stopped drinking for a little while, although I started drinking again when I was at uni. So like, I'd always put my career on hold, I put my family sort of life on hold, I put any sort of progression on hold, really, because I just carried on drinking and using. And some of those times when I was using were pretty dark times, you know better than anyone. You know, I'd been in trouble, I'd been locked up, I'd been in mental hospital. It's like, you know, there's several reasons where you think, right, you need to stop now, but I never had. Yeah. I just carried on.
People see, like, sometimes being drunk is just, they don't see the extents it can go to, do they? Yeah. And I think sometimes from the outside, especially because we're recognised sometimes in the street, they might not see the depth that we can sort of, you know, swim to. These are abysses, you know, that we've sort of sunk to during our times. But if your missus doesn't have that conversation with you.
Yeah.
Like, how important was that to sort of trigger you? Because that's like a jolt, like, really, isn't it? To sort of, to the system. Because when I've gone through stages and it's sort of like I've had to hold a mirror up to myself, because I'll hold my hands up every time. Every big mistake I've ever made in my life has come through either from some form of substance. It just has. And it's been the reflection on that leading to that why I've gone through these gaps of sobriety and what sort of led to it. But I've never had anyone turn around and say, you need to stop doing this. It's always been me that sort of said, right, I'm not going to do this because I'm aware that the issue that it's causing.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, you talk about rock bottoms, don't you? Do you know what I mean? Like, everyone having a sort of rock bottom. And there's a time when I think, oh, that's it, that's my rock bottom. But then it wasn't, because it might have stopped me for a little bit or give me that jolt. But then I'd, you know, maybe a day later, a week later, a month later, or in some cases a year later, I've picked up again, or I've gone and, you know, used drugs or had a drink. Whereas this time it did feel a little bit different. It did feel like this was almost like my last chance, almost, to have the life that I wanted. Yeah. That's how it felt. That might sound melodramatic, but that's how it felt. And I think if I hadn't had that conversation with Mrs. at the time, then, you know, there's a chance I could have carried on drinking and life would have been all right, or would have been able to manage it for a little while. I've been doing that for a while, but I think eventually I would have ended up worse than I've ever been. Yeah. Because that's what kept happening. I kept going back to sort of those rock bottoms, and those rock bottoms kept getting worse. And you worry, you wonder, do you, how much can you take? How much can you take of it?
And the thing is about rock bottom, when you're consistently hitting that, it becomes almost like a comfort zone because you're used to being in that situation. Do you know what I mean? So when that's the worrying thing, when that sort of surroundings or sense of self or dependency becomes that, when that's the norm, how it's so difficult to sort of get out of that.
Yeah.
What was the difficult? What was it that was particularly hard? Is it is it getting sober or staying sober? Is there a difference?
I think staying. You could get sober for a day or two. Do you know what I mean?
You get it out of your system.
Yeah, you get it out of your system and start drinking for a bit and you'll be okay. And I've had those moments of clarity where I've like, okay, now I need to stop, and I've stopped for a little while. But then it's staying, it's sticking with it, because every day is a different day. We have different challenges, different temptations. And it's very easy to sort of, if things are going well, have a drink or a drug or whatever. And if things are going badly, have a drink, and that used to be it. You know, you used to do it with me. Like, so if it was a sunny day, let's have a drink. It's sunny. If it was raining, let's have a drink and some drugs and stay inside. Do you know what I mean? No matter what the situation, you'd always sort of go towards drinking and using. But then I got to the point where I just realised, look, I can't keep doing this. I think there's so many different reasons why it was stuck around this time, or it stuck with me this time. Like, my age, age isn't everything. I know people that have got sober when they're in the 60s, 70s, or whatever. I know people that have done it when they're in their teens. But I was 34, been some dark places, been using for a long time. As I mentioned, like, trying to start a family, trying to get my career going, things like that. I felt like I'd done a lot during that time in terms of using drugs and stuff. I'd done all sorts. And then you feel like, it's not like I've got any more research to do. Like, I don't know anything now. I need to wonder.
There's enough evidence and data here to suggest that there may be a problem, Mr.
We've got a sample size we can work with. Yeah, that's it, bro.
Like,
so there's that element to it. So, and I think, I was still young enough to know that I had my whole life ahead of me. I had a whole, which has been the case the last 10 years, where I felt like, yes, I'm old enough to have that experience and to have done all those things I've done and to have learned from them, but I'm still young enough where I feel like I can have a full life without drinking drugs. And don't get me wrong, you might stop drinking when you're like 20 or whatever, or you might stop drinking when you're 70. It's all relative. Just for me, that felt like timing wise it was right.
Yeah, I think that can become quite a burden for a lot of people, is that I'm too young to be trying to get sober, or I'm too far gone to try and get sober. But that's what people need to be aware of, that it's each to their own. Everyone's. I don't really like the word journey, but you've got your own sort of life experience. You judge by your own sort of, like, your case study.
Yeah, it's a great point, because I've got a pal now he's a few years in, and I remember when I first got clean years ago, I ended up relapsing. But I remember speaking to his wife, who's a good friend of mine, and she was like, I used to go to meetings. I used to go to 12-step meetings, and she was like, will you take him? And he just, it was pointless. He didn't want to do it. And now he goes to meetings. I don't go to meetings. He goes to meetings, and he's quite, I wouldn't say militant. I think that's a bit of an exaggeration, but he's on it. He does meetings.
Some of the people that I know that have got sober do become quite strong with it.
Yeah, and he has a gut, like, sometimes he's on my case. He's like, you need to go to a meeting, you need to do this, you need to. So I'm like, yeah, but bro, like, I've been clean a lot longer than you have, and I'm okay. Do you know what I mean? Like, I get you're passionate about it and it's worked for you, but I'm doing it my way and I'm staying clean. I'm not saying you shouldn't do 12-step. If you 12-step works for you, I've used 12-step in the past and I've got clean for it and I've stayed clean for it for a period of time. And my friend has done it and he's doing it and he's staying clean. And I know a lot of people, still know a lot of people in recovery who do 12-step and it works for them. But for me, this time round, I didn't feel like I needed that.
Yeah.
And like, sometimes I think he gets a little bit annoyed at that.
I love the sort of image of when you used to see people at last orders outside a pub kicking shit out of each other, the drunken brawl, and now you're having sober wars.
Yeah, not surprised.
You're not doing it right.
You're not doing it right. Where's
you're
your
not supposed to be walking past that pub. There are other routes to go.
That's what it's like about it. It's like
fair play. I mean, I understand the reason.
I get it because sometimes I've been to a meeting with him. He goes to a meeting every Tuesday, I think it is, and I've been there with him, and it's like they ask at the end, has anyone got multiple years? Put your hand up. And I always feel like I'm like an example of what not to do for that meeting, because it's like I'm there and you say, do the steps, get a sponsor, go to meetings, and I don't do any of that.
Yeah.
So, and I have to sort of stress this point because I've had people who I speak to and I'm like, look, I've taken people to meetings. I've taken, a lad who's struggling. I've said, look, here's a good pathway to Brighton. It's up to you if you stick with it or whatever. So it does work for some people. It's just, for me this time round, I've done it my own way. You'd exhausted other options though, hadn't you? I mean, we're at 10 years now, and I remember we'd fell out of each other's lives for a while, and then when I caught up with you in London and you said you're not drinking, and that day we went to watch the match. Yeah, and I can't remember what game it was, but we're in the pub. I'm not surprised you can't remember. And I was I was proper mangled that night. But I was like, I'm not joking when you told me you don't drink anymore. Yeah. You were the first person out of all my group of friends that it was such an alien concept that somebody was sober. This is an age where non-alcoholic beers didn't exist. No, they didn't. We went to the pub and I think I had a Diet Coke or whatever, but that was like 2009 or whatever it was. But I was proper like, I thought, our relationship is built on getting levered. But you know what I mean? How are we supposed to sustain here? No, we did. We obviously been mates for years and obviously carried on. But we were laughing. Is like, me and you went out that day. We went around London and you was drinking and we watched it. I'm sure it was United Bolton. I think we lost. I think Anelka scored for Bolton. I might be getting that wrong, but I'm pretty sure that was what happened. And then I dropped you off in Covent Garden. I think you got dirty martinis. I was yeah, I do. And I'd not seen you for a while. I dropped you off, and then the next morning you messaged me and you went, bro, I need to get on what you're doing. I can't keep drinking. I swear. Like, I've had a nightmare and all this. So I was like, I was proper fucked. Like, that, honestly, I proper smashed, and not in anybody's good books. Yeah, I think you said you'd had. But it was just, a bit of I was amazed, amazed by it being such a weird thing at the time, especially for someone like, because we were in our 20s then, weren't we? Because I would have been 29 then. Yeah, so late 20s. And again, the age thing comes into it. But that was one of the stages where I went through. At that time when me and you met up, it might have been 2008, to be honest with you. It might have been around. No, it wouldn't have been. It would have been 2009. I can't remember. It would have been. I don't know anyway. Whenever it was, it was around that time. But I'd gone through a stage of being like, on it. I'd done like detox, rehab, 12-step, second stage rehab, like proper, like my whole life had become like staying clean and getting sober. And I'd done all that, and that's when I started going to college in London and going to uni in London. I stayed in London because I'd gone to rehab in London. And then I think it was in my second year at uni I started drinking again. But like that was after you started drinking again, after a weed met up, or had you started? I started drinking after weed met up, like. So I'm not taking any blame. No, not that day. Like Scotty looks like having a right laugh there. You know what I mean? We've had a right good time. So no, but I'd like proper done everything you should do, or you can do, like the whole detox, rehab, second stage rehab, 12-step, doing meetings constantly, sponsoring people, having a sponsor. I'd fully embraced it. And then eventually, I just stopped going as much and I stopped doing all that. And I think the problem for me is because I had so much going on around recovery and I was so encased in all, that when I stopped doing that, I was reliant on it. So I found it difficult to stay sober without any of it. Yeah, you're sort of holding on to the life raft too much. Yeah, really. That was it. And I think had I stayed in it and had I stayed doing what I was doing, I would have been fine, but I didn't. Yeah. I just stopped doing it for a multitude of reasons. Stopped going to meetings, stopped sponsoring people, stopped being sponsored, stopped doing the programme, started hanging around with people that were in recovery a little bit more, going out with people that were drinking, and eventually, I relapsed because over the years, I've tried so many different ways of getting clean.
Well, that's testament, though, isn't it? You were saying before about there isn't one way for one person to do it. You know what I mean? Yeah, you're testament to that, because you've tried and found what was right for you, but it's having the willingness to try alternative ways if one way isn't working.
Do you know, I remember I talk about this all the time. Like, one of the first ways I tried to get sober was I used to see a counsellor, right? And he told me to do a drink and drugs diary, where you fill it in every day, right? So the idea is you fill in how much drink and drugs you've had, and then the next day you try and cut down, yeah? So, like, you know, I know this sounds ridiculous, but this is what they had me doing. So it's like Monday, you know, I've had like 10 pints of Stella and 3 bags of Sniff. Tuesday I'll have like 9 pints of Stella and 2 bags of Sniff or whatever, right? So I used to have an appointment with him on a Friday, and I used to fill it in on the way there, like, and I'd write in like Friday or Monday, you know, 10 pints of Stella, 3 bags of Sniff. Tuesday, 9 pints of Stella, 2 bags of Sniff. And I'd cut it down each day as I was filling it in. So by the time I got to Friday, I'd be on like half a shandy. And I'd go in there and I'd show it them, and they'd be going, look, you're doing great, just carry on. And I'd leave it there thinking I was. But it was all a load of bollocks. I just lied. Do you know what I mean? But that was one of the ways that people, like, I tried to get clean. Obviously,
that's such
nonsense.
A fucking weird way of getting some, like people with addiction problems have problems with telling the truth to other people, let alone to themselves. Do you know what I mean?
I think that was one of the ways, like, that some people who haven't been through it try to get those who are going through it help, or try to help those who are going through it. I'm not knocking it, because it was a way that they thought worked, but it didn't work for me. And it was kind of ridiculous that you're filling in this diary and you're being honest about it, and that you're going to cut down each day by filling in this diary. It was nonsense.
That sounds like more if you've got a drinking problem than a drinking addiction.
Well, either or, yeah. I mean, they knew what I was about, and it certainly didn't work for me. And this is when I was in a right state, and yet I convinced myself it was like I was doing the right thing, and obviously it didn't work, and long term it went out the window. But that was one of the different ways I tried, and I think I tried a lot of different ways before the way I try now, which is kind of different, because it isn't necessarily a program or a way. It's just living my life a certain way.
What do you notice? A lot of people talk obviously about the health benefits for cutting out drugs and drink, but just you as a person, like I'm aware myself as to how much you've changed, but how self-aware are you of the person that you were during the height of your addiction problems and the person you are now? Do you ever contrast?
A little bit. You know what the trouble is, right? When you look back on your drinking, and I think you might have done this, I know you're not sober, sometimes when you look back on your drinking and drug use, you look back on it like it was an hip-hop video, or like it was like, oh yeah, I was balling, it was great, I was sat there, do you know what I mean, drinking champagne and all that. And you don't look back at it and how gritty and horrible it could be.
Mine's a Ken Loach film.
Is your Ken Loach film, right? Like, sometimes you can have that sort of euphoric recall where you look back and think, oh, it was great, or I was all right. But I think I'm being honest, and I can look at it properly, you realise that it, you know, it was horrible, and I wasn't great in it. I wasn't honest. I wasn't in a good way mentally or physically, and I couldn't, you know, get a grip of anything, and I was always getting myself in trouble. And you don't get, you know, keep getting nicked because you're doing the right thing. I was, you know what I mean, I was an idiot basically. And you know, you look at my sort of criminal record, it's just nonsense, it's just chavvy, it's chavvy shit. It's nothing like, I wasn't a criminal mastermind. It's just nonsense, and it's embarrassing when I've seen it. And I look at that and I just think, I hate when people say I don't recognise that person, because I do. It was just a shit version of the person I would later become. Because I think as you get older, as you get more responsibilities, I've got people that depend on me now. Obviously, I can be honest, and I try to be honest. And I try to be honest all the time. And that's one thing, that there's certain things that I do to try and keep myself safe, and it sounds crazy, but even the honesty thing. Like, I went to Own Bargains the other day. I think it was Own Bargains, not Own Bargains. It was at the Food Warehouse. And sounds fucking stupid, but I accidentally shoplifted, right? And I'd done this a few times where I've accidentally left the shop without paying for something. Now, back in the day, I used to shoplift all the time. It was, you know, it was just a thing that I did. But
what are you into? Shoplifting?
Yeah, I didn't feel no way about it. Like, I used to feel like it was a victimless crime. Like, you could get away with nicking stuff.
What did you shoplift?
Everything, like anything, like obviously beer and stuff like that, and drink. But then there's a time when I was going through that, times when I'd nick stuff to sell.
Did you have like, what was it, down the top, or what was you? Like, sorry, I noticed inside. Yeah, like big
stuff like that. Yeah, no, like obviously the main, like if I could nick alcohol back in the day, I would do. But then you nick stuff like, I'm trying to think what you nick, like. Say this. I think there's a statute of limitations on it. But if you went to say like Boots, the chemist, you could nick stuff from there that you could sell, or you when like.
So that's just like desperate levels.
Yeah, that was the when I was really.
How are you? Like people will watch this and they may ask that, how can you not see the state that you're in? How have you not got that awareness?
Because one of the things you'll always do when you're an addict and when you use it and when you're in trouble is you'll look at the people that are worse off with you.
Yeah.
So I'd look at people who were like heroin addicts who were injecting heroin, and I was scared of needles. I never touched needles. I go, well, at least, look at the state of them lot. Look at them, look at them. They are a mess. Like, God, I'd never get like that. And yet, you might be sat in a cell next to them, but they're the worst.
They've got 2 years, I've only got one.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? So there's always a way of sort of rationalising it and sort of looking down on people. It sounds crazy how you look down on someone when you're in the gutter.
It's amazing.
You would.
Yeah,
you look down on them and go, oh, that guy's messed up.
It's a deluded sense of hierarchy of problems. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like when you're keeping up with the Joneses in your in the street with the neighbours, innit? Look at them.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, going back to the day, I walked out because I didn't have a trolley, so I put some cheese in my pocket. Like,
cheese.
Yeah. Like,
why didn't you have a bag?
Because I was only getting a couple of bits, right? Because we were going up Rivington Pike for a picnic, and I thought I'll grab a few bits, and then before I knew it, my hands were full. So it was just a block of cheese, because I thought I'd make some sardines or whatever. And then I paid for everything, walked out, got across the road, not across the road, because it was in a car park in West 1 in Salford. And I got to my car and realised I had this cheese in my pocket, so I had to go back and queue up to pay for it. Because little things like I thought I'm not, even I'm guaranteed like the flying squad ain't going to come knocking on my door because of a block of cheese. But not to go down that route in any way, shape or form.
Wow.
Do you understand
yeah. So I mean that is quite the straight and narrow path, because if some people may have kept that cheese whether they want to stay sober or not, and looked at
the man I've become, a man who can give back cheese now. I can pay for cheese. Hey, that's what happens to you when you get 10 years in. It's part of the contract.
You get a coin.
You can pay for cheese. Yeah, you get a coin that says "We'll pay for cheese." But that's just little, like there's certain things I do that other people might do. Like I don't drink non-alcoholic beer.
Yeah.
Or non-alcoholic spirits. I know there's this thing like alcohol-free gin and tonic stuff like that. I don't do that, and I try and be honest. I try and keep myself safe that way, because I feel like if I go down that route or road incrementally, like just by shoplifting cheese or by drinking beer that's not beer or whatever, that for me, I know everyone's different, can lead to eventually, oh, do you know what? I'd get away with this. Yeah. I'd get away with shoplifting. I'd get away with this. I'd get away with having a beer, and I don't want to obviously risk it, and I don't really feel the need to either.
You don't know what sort of damage it'll cause.
Hey, really good that. Hey.
I was trying to find something about slippery slope, but I couldn't really think of anything. Anyway, enough about the cheese stories. This is about sobriety. I'm very proud of you, Jay.
Thank you,
And as ever, we're ending with a smile, and I'm going to check his pockets before he leaves the room. If you've got any problems, you're going through any issues with alcohol, there are obviously loads of people you can speak to, but if you want to get in touch with us, we're more than happy to answer your emails at scottyandmotti@gmail.com. That's been Motti, 10 years sober, and doesn't steal cheese anymore. I've been Scotty. I've still got my issues. See you soon.